Hello and a very good morning. Thanks for tuning in to News 9 Live. I'm Kabir Naqvi. Joining me here in the studio is my colleague Nancy Bora, and what we're essentially up to every day at 8 a.m. is to take a look at the top developments on newspapers. Hence the show today is page 1. But today, yet again, it's the second day of G20, which is why our show has a G20 flavor to itself as well. And what Nancy and I are going to cover is essentially a recap of day 1. But more than that, today there's going to be a proper photo op session at Rajghat, and we're getting visuals live from Rajghat even as it's raining over there. The Prime Minister, of course, early in the morning, punctual as he is, right there to shake hands of all the dignitaries. Leader of the World Bank meeting the Prime Minister right now. Visuals coming across from Rajghat. Well, Nancy, I was trying to, quiet down and listen in to what the Prime Minister and the leader of the World Bank were essentially talking about. But couldn't do so. Seems like the head of the WHO, the World Health Organization, now making his way to meet and greet the Prime Minister early in the morning. It has rained. The rain has intensified, Nancy, but it only makes for more intense conversations and bilaterals. It in no way is going to, dampen on the aspirations of the world leaders today.
I think what happened yesterday, and I think, so many things happened. We have so many topics to cover. We have so many things to talk about because it was definitely, a historic day 1 for the G20 Summit. Because, we have, I was waiting for India for the Delhi Declaration. I was waiting, we have to create history with this one. And I think we did a pretty great job. And today, it's a beautiful weather today, although it's raining, but, Prime Minister Modi is always there. He's always there before time. He's just not on time, he's always there before time. So, we can see him, he's there to attend the leaders, to attend the delegates. And yeah, it's going to, today, it's a very chill day for the G20 second day because all the talks have happened.
Is it going to be actually a chill day? Because we've got so much that is lined up to take place and happen today. Let me just take the viewers through what all is going to happen today. Arrival of all the leaders and heads of delegations at Rajghat, which is what you're currently witnessing. All of this is going to happen in individual motorcades now, Nancy, which is why, again, the ring road, there have been some traffic curb changes. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, check the Delhi Police website for all the latest traffic curbs for today, because portions of the ring road are again being used by the global leaders, which is why they're going to be off limits for the rest of the people. At 9 a.m. till about 9:20, there is going to be laying of the wreath at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi and a live performance of Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs or his hymns. And I'm sure a couple of them that are quite archetypical and classic Mahatma Gandhi hymns. Raghupati Raghav Raja Ram, certainly on that list. At 9:20 a.m., leaders and heads of the delegations will move back to the Leaders' Lounge and depart for the Bharat Mandapam in individual motorcades. And even as that happens, arrival of all the leaders and heads of delegations at the summit venue at Bharat Mandapam will happen between 9:40 to 10:15. Let's not forget, today is going to be the third and the final session of the G20 Summit, which is one family, final portion of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. So that one future session is going to take place today, Nancy, and that one future alliance is something that the leaders will talk about. Like I said, maybe the rain has intensified, but that, only opens the door for a conversation, for more intense discussions, right?
True. And I think what happened yesterday was so, the Delhi Declaration, the corridor, and the admitting African Union as permanent member of the G20. And I think India is following the theme. We were supposed to play the role of negotiator between the countries. We although we have said this many times that this is not a place to resolve geopolitical issues, but we still did a great job at at being the negotiator, at allowing discussions to happen, allowing voice to the global south.
Right. Take a look at how the newspapers are putting it. It says, New Delhi G20 declaration adopted at Leaders' Summit. Call to step up efforts and deny safe haven to terror. Biofuel alliance has been reached at for sustainable energy. The New Delhi consensus. Bada bada likha hua hai.
100% consensus.
100% consensus. You're absolutely right. Tightrope walk across divide finds common ground on Ukraine war. The G20. I mean, even the cartoonists have nothing else to draw but to say G20. Historical agreement, beacon of innovation. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Saudi Arabia Prime Minister and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Joe Biden, UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. All of them together last evening announced the corridor, the economic corridor at the G20 Leaders' Summit. Now, India, Middle East, East Europe economic corridor was unveiled, and what for many said was a journey of dreams and hope. This has been backed by the United States, the European Union, and the first meeting is going to take place in just the next 60 days. This is in terms of ship and port connectivity, in terms of land and rail connectivity. There's going to be cable for data, which is going to be laid under the sea, and of course, a motivation for cleaner energy. India, Middle East, Europe.
And
Wow.
I think it's a big deal. As Biden, I want to quote Biden here because he said that it's a historic and it's a big deal because this is going to strengthen the economic ties as well. And interestingly, this is going to be a good answer to the China's Road and Belt Initiative that we were talking about, because Pakistan has been at it. They are not allowing us to export our trades to to use their route. So I think India was very smart to find an alternate route, and I think it's going to be, it was a big answer, although it will strengthen our ties with the 7 nations that are involved here, and it will connect India to the Europe continent and our entry into the Arabia Peninsula. But still, it was a tight answer to the China and Pakistan, who have been creating a lot of hurdles for India to get that connectivity to the global market, to the European market, I would say.
It also says here G20 becomes G21 as India takes lead in bringing African Union to global table. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, flanked by Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan at the G20 Summit. It was a big move. I mean, right before even the first session, the Prime Minister got up, he invited the African Union, they hugged, everybody, clapped it, they gave a loud round of applause, and after that, the G20 began. And I mean, that set the right,
tone for the summit, because the theme is that one nation, one family, one future, and India has been saying this continuously, that we are the voice of the developing countries, we are the voice of the global south. So having that, being a negotiator, you have to have ties with the developed countries, but you also have to think about the developing countries, and India is doing just that, being voice of. I think it was high time that we would have given African Union the place that they deserve in the G20 summit. And I think India was lucky enough to be the host, when we admitted African Union as permanent member, and it went so right with the theme, it went so right with the India's agenda for this G20 summit.
I'm just looking at the inner pages of how newspapers are covering the G20 summit, because yesterday was a big day. We also looked at how the global media was covering the G20 summit back in India, and everybody had, well, of course, apart from the Global Times, the Chinese publication, everybody had only good things to say.
No, but there was sorry to cut you off, but there was an interesting thing to note about the Global Times as well, because they were not essentially criticizing India, although they took it in a different stand. But the ongoing war between the West and China, India is in between that war, but still India emerges as friend of both the sides. So China was like, India wants to have a cordial relationship with us. We are looking forward to have a good relation, a strategic alliance with China, but with India. But the West is coming in between. So it was interesting to know that suddenly, I think before G20 or before I think COVID, the global coverage of India was not that much in positive light. But after the G20 summit, after we made historical launches in the space, space discovery, I think we created that that image, that emerging global power image, and suddenly all the headlines, the tables have turned. because the Reuters, the top headline in Reuters was that Biden was trying to woo India's Modi. That was such an interesting thing to note, that a prime president of a global power, as we say, the best, the influencing global power, is trying to woo our prime minister to strengthen the ties, because every developed country, every country right now will benefit by having a good relationship with India. May it be economic relationship, may it be defense relationship. I think strengthening ties with India is so important for every developing country, and I think it's a very proud moment for us as well to see India emerging as the global power.
You're absolutely right. PM holds bilateral meetings with Japan's Fumio Kishida and Italy's Giorgia Meloni and Rishi Sunak. All of this also happened yesterday. Anything important to touch on that front? Because in terms of our Indo-Japanese relationship and ties, there's another addition to that trade deal. Apart from that, both the countries have now touched upon helping each other out more in terms of technical advancements. In our Delhi metro, we've used Japanese technology. So much of super fast railway network, we're picking that up from Japan. How can India help out Japan on the other hand? That is something that both the leaders looked at. Rishi Sunak and Prime Minister Modi, on the other hand, when you're looking at India and UK's relationship, it says here, PM and Sunak agree to expedite FTA negotiation, free trade agreement negotiation. So it was already said that it's not guaranteed that something is going to be arrived at, but baatcheet ho chuki hai, and like Rishi Sunak says it, he really respects Modi ji. And
I think Rishi Sunak is the most excited person to be here right now from all the delegates that are arriving, all the global. I think Rishi Sunak is enjoying himself the most, because he visited Akshardham. He's getting in touch with his roots, I think, here, because he's so happy to meet Prime Minister Modi. He was smiling at the dinner as well. His wife and him, they were looking so pretty together, and the way he's talking about issues, the way he's looking forward to strengthen ties with India is something commendable from his side. The way he came out and he gave us straightforward answers to whether it was issues like Khalistan, whether it was trade agreement, whether it was any visa agreement, everything. He's been so straightforward, and he wants to he's really looking forward to have a good relation with India, and I think that is that is going to benefit India one way or the other.
Absolutely. The Prime Minister having to do the arduous task of explaining to everybody, the roots and the lineage of Mahatma Gandhi and what Rajghat symbolizes, what it represents. It is a part and parcel of the Indian ethos, and if I could go on to say a part of our freedom struggle as well, what this place signifies. And the Rajghat has been close to the Prime Minister as well. Not just that it is protocol to visit the Rajghat on all the national holidays and all, for example, the Republic Day or the Independence Day. But the Prime Minister does go to the Rajghat before big events by himself, and this time around he's made sure that all the global leaders visit Rajghat as well. Gandhiji's Samadhi, all the world leaders, I mean, you name it, all the superpowers are cycling it back, turning back time. They're all coming and visiting Mahatma Gandhi, all thanks to Prime Minister Modi.
I think it ignites that patriotic feeling among every citizen right now, because when you see global leaders coming in, paying their respect, paying their tribute to Mahatma Gandhi and his contributions, if I lay them out, the list goes on and on. And I think it's very important for us to showcase that cultural heritage of India, that history of India, that how it is important for us to respect that particular aspect of our history. And I think the G20 Summit that we are hosting right now, it's all because of the roots of India, the struggle that we had from being we are still a developing country, but being the voice of the developing country. I think that is something very important, and India is emerging as a global power right now. It is coming out as something that every developing country, every developed country is looking forward to have ties with, and we are putting out a strong image that India is no more a state who is just going to outsource your jobs, but India is going to be a country that is going to provide job opportunities.
My life is my message, a big quotation written over there and attributed to late Mahatma Gandhi. The iconic statue over there as well. The principles of Mahatma Gandhi, simple living, high thinking, living in local villages, self-sustaining, small villages. Those ideas are so ahead of, Mahatma Gandhi's own times. The teachings of Mahatma Gandhi are still true today, and the basic fundamentals of carrying out, one's life. Like he says it there on the big board, my life is my message. Your life should be your message now, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it should be definitely, because I think Modi government has always been very keen on the principles that were advocated by Mahatma Gandhi, whether it is ahimsa, whether it has been the ahimsa, that this is not an era of war. That is what Modi government said, to make everybody agree on the Ukraine consensus. And I think the conflict that is happening in Ukraine and Russia, and I think India adopting that principles, working on it, and presenting itself as a country who wants to talk about issues, talk about geopolitical issues, but still remain an independent sovereignty. That is what I think was the best. And I just wanted to ask you about the Delhi Declaration as well. It was a historical win for India to achieve 100% consensus. And
something that was missing in the Indonesian, G20 meet.
Yes,
last
exactly.
Year.
And I think till yesterday we were questioning whether we are going to, whether we will be able to unveil a declaration or not. And suddenly we were there with the declaration with 100% consensus. And I think it was such a proud moment for me. And I love how Jaishankar responded. Bali was Bali and New Delhi is New Delhi. That is what we are talking about. That is how India is. That is what India's stand is. That we are not affiliated with anybody, and we are not going to get affected by any other country. And whatever happened, whatever happened in Bali and whatever happened in that consensus is not going to happen here as well. So I think it was such an important concern. And if you read the declaration as well, it is so important that whatever they're talking about, we although we did receive some criticism from the Ukraine, which was given, that we use the term that the ongoing conflict in Russia, not against Russia. And Ukraine really thought that if we invited them, there would have been a space, there would have a better understanding of the Ukrainian side in the G20 summit. But I think India did a fair job. They said that this is not a stage to address geopolitical issues, but we do address that whatever is happening is going to affect all the developing countries, the trade, the culture, everything is being affected because of it, and the economic slowdown is really something concerning because of the ongoing conflict. So I think India took a neutral stand again. India established its position that we are not a country that is going to get affected by the West, or by going to get scared by the China's aggression. We are an independent country. We have our opinions, we have our views, and we are really looking forward towards a human-centric approach to development.
Right.
I think India did a pretty fair job at hosting the summit, and coming at a consensus, and 100% consensus. That was something that I was actually really proud of.
Still a lot more that is left, ladies and gentlemen. Let me again, for all of you who are joining us right now, let me quickly take you through today's schedule for all the world leaders. It says right here that what you're seeing on your television screens, on your mobile screens, on whatever screen that you're catching this stream on, the leaders and heads of states are arriving at Rajghat. This is going to be followed by the signing of the peace wall and a proper photo op of all the leaders who have come to Delhi for the G20 Summit, after which at about 9 a.m.ish, all the leaders will lay wreaths at Rajghat, and that is going to be followed by a concert of Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs and hymns. At about 9:20 a.m., the leaders then begin to leave for the Bharat Mandapam. It's a long process because all the leaders are going to travel in individual motorcade for safety. It's going to take about 20 to 25 minutes, and at about 9:40 a.m., the arrival of all the leaders at Bharat Mandapam is going to begin. Then at about 10:15, after all the arrivals have gotten over with. The tree planting ceremony at the second level of the Bharat Mandapam, that is going to take place. There's a tree planting ceremony today as well. And at 10:30 a.m., 15 minutes after the tree planting session, the third session of the summit, One Future, will take place at the Bharat Mandapam, which is the venue of the G20 Summit. This session is going to be followed by the adoption of the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration, something that has been reached 100% consensus on. The summit is scheduled to end at about 12:30 p.m., after which press conferences are going to take place and a lunch, working lunch with Emmanuel Macron and a press brief. So it's all going to culminate by 4 p.m.-ish from what I'm looking at, Nancy. But aaj bhi kafi kaam baki hai. There's going to be an intense round of discussion. But more importantly, what I wanted to essentially show the viewers as well was, this particular headline. I think it really sums up what G20 meant for the entire nation. I'll just quickly show this to the camera. It says, Brand Bharat, loud and clear. And this is exactly what happened yesterday. In front of the Konark wheel, the iconic Konark wheel, the wheel of democracy, what many people say as well. It says right here, Brand Bharat, loud and clear. Prime Minister Modi telling Joe Biden and other world leaders about the Konark wheel. Various statues of Mahatma Gandhi at the Rajghat premises as well. Such moving statues, right, of the man.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful.
कहीं पे कपड़ा सी रहे हैं, कहीं पे साइकिल चला रहे हैं.
The simplicity in his statues.
Simple living, high thinking.
Yes, that is what India is about. I feel like we are a simple city, we are a simple country, but we are going to take our stand. We are going to be independent. We are going to not going to take anybody else's influence, because I think India's approach has always been like this. We have been a negotiator. We have always been, this is not an era of war. We don't want to get into it, because whenever conflict happens at a global level, India is expected to take a stand. But whenever a conflict that has been going on with China, with Pakistan, nobody takes a stand for India. And I think it was high time that India realized that we are independent, we are on our own, so we have to take our stand that in that particular way only. So I think it was commendable for India to host the presidency in a way, and advocate the principles that were taught by the father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi.
It says here there are 7 reasons why the corridor, the the US, Middle East, Europe, India, Middle East, Europe corridor, backed by the United States and the European Union. 7 reasons why the corridor from India charts a new course in the world. I'm just going to take you through those 7 portions. It says here, first, just a few years ago, the conventional wisdom in Delhi said that India and US might work together in the Indo-Pacific, but had little in common in the Middle East. That myth was broken when India and the United States joined hands. Second, it breaks Pakistan's veto over India's overland connectivity to the West. Since the 1990s, Delhi has sought various trans-regional connectivity projects with Pakistan, but Islamabad was adamant in its refusal to let India gain access to the landlocked Afghanistan and Central Asia. Thirdly, Tehran is more open to India, but its confrontation with the West has cast a shadow over the commercial utility of corridors across Iran to Eurasia. But maybe, just maybe that's going to change. Fourth, the corridor will deepen India's strategic engagement with the Arabian Peninsula. The Modi government, which had rapidly elevated political and strategic links with the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia in the last few years, now has an opportunity to build enduring connectivity between India and Arabia. During the years of British Raj, the subcontinent's resources played a key role in linking India, Arabia and Europa. The current project will restore India's role as a driver in shaping regional connectivity. Sixth, it is no secret that the new corridor is being presented as an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is something, Nancy, that you did throw some light on, which a number of countries in South Asia and Middle East and Africa have embraced. A lot would depend on the speed at which the new corridor is implemented. And lastly, the 7th point, The corridor also marks the mobilization of Europe into the infrastructure development in the region. The European Union had earmarked 300 million euros for the infrastructure spending worldwide during 2021 and 2027. Its support for the new corridor will make the EU a major stakeholder, which is again important. For this India, Middle East and Europe corridor, which is certainly going to change things around. I'm being told that my colleague and Strategic Affairs Editor Aditya Rajghat is with us on the broadcast. A very good morning to you, Aditya. Aditya, where are you joining us from today? The rain has certainly intensified, and I was talking to Nancy about how even though the rain is intensified, it only gives room for more intensified conversations back at the Bharat Mandapam.
Well, that's right, Kabir. Rains yet again lashing in the capital, but that hasn't really dampened the spirits. At this moment, currently, the global leaders are at Rajghat, at the Samadhi of the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, not very far from the Bharat Mandapam, the G20 venue. And in a few minutes from now, after laying wreath at the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial in Rajghat, all these global leaders will come for the last session in Bharat Mandapam. And thereafter, the handing over ceremony to Brazil will happen, because Brazil will be hosting the next G20 in 2024. Let's remember, last day was in fact a very momentous day yesterday, where not only did India build a consensus at the G20 with the final New Delhi declaration, but there was a consensus on Ukraine as well, something that surprised hundreds and thousands of people all across the globe, especially global journalists and foreign policy wonks who had not expected that a consensus will be developed, especially after the differences that had emerged at the G20 Summit in Bali. And not only that, there have been several multilaterals on the sidelines of the G20 as well. One that you just mentioned about connectivity that we had been speaking all day long about yesterday. That was something strategic, and as you pointed out, is a setback for China's BRI as well. Because, for instance, Italy, who was part of the BRI, has exited the Border Roads Initiative of China, and now is part of this global connectivity project between US, Europe, Middle East and India. That will not only connect and build economic cooperation within the Middle East, but connect from US to Europe to Middle East to India. Something much bigger and larger in scope than the BRI itself. Of course, global media's attention was also to Putin's and Xi Jinping's absence from the G20, but clearly Putin had been absent from the last G20 in Bali as well. So it was no surprise that at a time when the Ukraine-Russia war was ongoing and Russia's invasion of Ukraine was carrying global headlines, that Putin would again skip. But Xi Jinping's skipping of the G20 came as a surprise for many. But after India's historic consensus at the G20, it's clearly a win-win situation for New Delhi, and something of a missed opportunity for the Chinese head of the state, Xi Jinping, who clearly missed the bus really on this.
You know what, you've actually hit the nail on the head, because Jake Sullivan on that on board the Air Force One and that press gaggle that did come out, he had made sure to put forth his opinion on Xi Jinping's absence, and he said that that is in no way going to affect the declaration that is going to come out in New Delhi. Now, you've given us a recap of what happened yesterday, what one can expect today, but throw some light on that tree planting ceremony that's going to take place on the second level of the Bharat Mandapam. Do you have more information about what's going to be the significance of that? I was thinking maybe the tree planting ceremony could have taken place right ahead of the One Earth session, but that didn't happen. More information from you, Aditya, on that?
When One Earth and One Family was in fact the theme of the G20 first two sessions yesterday, One Future is something that is the final concluding this session of the G20 that most of the G20 leaders would be actually attending. And immediately after attending the memorial service and the wreath laying at Rajghat, all these global leaders will converge at the Bharat Mandapam, where a tree sampling ceremony will take place indoors. And of course, this is looking at one future, not just about climate change. This is about connecting all the global communities, all the global nations as one family, and that's why it's a symbolic gesture in the form of a tree sampling plantation that will take place at the Bharat Mandapam. One thing that I missed in my last chat was about India not only emerging as a leader of the global south this time, but also emerging as a global voice of the voiceless. This is paramount and this is most important because African Union during India's presidency has become a permanent member of the G20, and this also comes at a time when Chinese are heavily invested in Africa. It was a very emotional and powerful moment when Prime Minister Narendra Modi embraced the African leader, the leader of the African Union and the representative who had come in here. Yesterday I had a chat with a spokesperson of the South African president who sounded very optimistic and was very welcoming in his statements of African Union actually now participating as a permanent member with an equal stature with the most important 20 other countries globally. So clearly India has made it happen. China perhaps wanted to scuttle it as much as possible because we know that Beijing certainly doesn't believe in territorial integrity or international law or of course the international order. So clearly it's a win-win situation for New Delhi. Today we'll not only have the tree plantation ceremony and the last session but also there are several bilaterals through the day that will be happening, most important between Modi and the French President Macron, and thereafter we'll have a press briefing by the French President as well. Perhaps by lunchtime will be the concluding session of the G20, but overall the G20 Summit conclusion comes as a very historic and momentous occasion, not just for India and the African Union, but the entire global south and perhaps for the global community as well. But this is because this is not a G20 or this is not an India that will now listen to the patronizing tone of the West, and there will no longer be diktats issued by the West, and they need to understand that dialogue is the only solution, and you need to have dialogue with African Union, India and the global south with equal footing as equal partners and not teach us lessons in democracy. So clearly a very resounding and a strong message being sent out by New Delhi at the G20.
You know, you're absolutely right. Brand Bharat has been heard loud and clear across the length and breadth of the entire planet. You're absolutely right over there, Aditya. Aditya, before we let you go, you said the working lunch today between Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Modi might be the final, process of the G20 summit. But a lot of people have been asking me, and since, you're there at the International Media Center, by what time can people, ply their vehicles on the roads again? We're learning that Joe Biden is going to leave right after Rajghat and not attend the final session. But what about the other leaders? Even as they move towards the airport, that's going to start blocking up the roads again now, isn't it?
Well, yes, that's right, Kabir. In Air Force One, Joe Biden would be leaving immediately after the Rajghat session because he has to fly to Vietnam, where he has another bilateral visit, and he is slated to speak in Vietnam as well. So let's see what he has to say about G20 or India in Vietnam or on board the Air Force One. Thereafter, a little after 1 p.m. will be the time when the departure of the leaders would actually begin in New Delhi. So as of now, till about 6 p.m. in the evening, it's advisable that the commuters in New Delhi area and towards the airport route on the national highway as well avoid those routes completely, because till about late night these departures will continue, and perhaps it's only on midnight or tomorrow morning when common people can ply their vehicular traffic will be as normal as before. Of course, this morning rains have lashed in the national capital, and that's made traffic situation worse, but thankfully it's a Sunday, it's not a working day, and there were advisories that were issued all along. But as we part this initial live broadcast here from the G20 venue, I'm at the International Media Center just meters away from the Bharat Mandapam. It's certainly a very momentous occasion for New Delhi. There are celebrations, and also the leadership of Modi and Jaishankar is certainly being talked about, and of course the role played by Amitabh Kant, Harshvardhan Shringla and the dynamic diplomats of the Ministry of External Affairs who were part of the G20 Secretariat. Because one issue that the global media was talking about all across was about Ukraine-Russia war, and it was almost given by them, almost declared by the global media, that no consensus will be actually achieved. But the unthinkable has been done by the Modi-Jaishankar leadership of India, and this is an India that has learnt its lessons very early in the days, and over the years has matured its diplomacy. So clearly, it isn't a time when India can be ignored. India was relevant, is relevant, and will be much more relevant in the coming days.
You know, you're absolutely right over there, Aditya. Aditya, I know you've got a big day lined up for, for you. We're going to let you off the hook now. Many thanks for joining with us. And if there's any update, we're going to keep coming back to you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Aditya from the International Media Center, meters away from the Bharat Mandapam, where very soon, even as we're looking at those visuals of the world leaders arriving at Rajghat, very soon all the leaders are going to go back to Bharat Mandapam. The final session of the G20 Summit is going to be carried out, after which, bilaterals are going to take place. Thoda kaam hota rahega, thoda lunch hota rahega. That's essentially the idea.
Yes.
So, now I understand when you say that today is going to be a chiller working day. Well, it's a Sunday,
Yeah.
I mean, it better be a chiller working day.
Not for us, but yeah, for them, I think it would be a chill day because, the bilateral talks are obviously going to be important with Emmanuel Macron as well. And they are going to, they are going to hold press conference as well in India. Emmanuel Macron has a press conference
right at the International Media Center where Aditya is
Yes.
right now. That's where Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Modi are going to hold that press conference.
And exactly, and I think it's very important that whatever they'll say, the outcomes of these bilateral talks are going to affect the future of India, the the economic future of India, the way we are pitching financial stability, the way we are pitching financial equality in the world. And I think that is something important that we have to talk about with the developed nations, that how are we going to use the resources that are available to us in a manner that even the developed and the developing countries are being benefited by it.
Prime Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, over there, that you can see on your television screens, ladies and gentlemen. And again, the Prime Minister for the nth number of time telling.
I think it's a very important responsibility to
it
let
is,
people know that what the
certainly
backdrop is for today's, and he was doing the same thing at the dinner as well. Taking everybody, look at this. This is our culture. Telling the backstory of the image that is there. So I think it's a very important responsibility, Kabir, if you think about it.
And many people were already saying that the president wasn't involved in the inauguration of the new parliament building, but the prime minister made sure that the president was involved this time around. The dinner was hosted by the president, not the prime minister.
The president of Bharat.
The president of Bharat. Well, that is a completely different debate. I don't want to digress from our focus over here, which is the G20 Summit, and leaders continue to come together, after which there is going to be a signing of the peace wall. I'm waiting to see that peace wall, whether that's going to turn into a mosaic, a historical piece, because all the world leaders are going to give their signatures there. They should preserve it, and maybe for days to come, it's going to be preserved in a museum. About 3 decades from now, it might be a great piece of history.
Absolutely, I think the Delhi Declaration has already created history. With that 100% consensus, and as students are going to learn about it, going to read about it in the future, and so that they remember that I think by then India will be would have taken leaps in every aspect, in every sector. But
I'm
they
just
will
glad
remember.
we're going to learn about some other president than George Bush and George Washington and Ben Franklin and the actual US stalwarts. Will finally the students are going to understand about how Joe Biden and Barack Obama's administration and their relationship with India. Let's not forget Donald Trump and Narendra Modi's relationship was also something that people spoke about a lot. But it seems like Donald Trump, with his recent arraignments, and again, not going to digress from the G20, but a lot at play. That's why it's so interesting, because geopolitics has come so close to home that it's not third worldism anymore. It's an actual responsibility that India takes on its own shoulders, voluntarily, and that again goes on to speak about India's foreign diplomacy and our poster boys of it, Narendra Modi and S. Jaishankar. But we were speaking to Aditya, and Aditya made that point about how the admission of African Union as a permanent member on the high table is a great step when we're talking about involving the entire globe on global issues. Aditya yesterday spoke to one of the major stakeholders from the African Union who now sit on the high table. Take a look at this conversation and we'll come back even as all the arrivals continue to take place at Rajghat.
The G20 Summit is underway and the big talking point has been the permanent inclusion of the African Union as a permanent member of the G20. And we have with us Mr. Vincent Magwenya, who is the spokesperson of the President of South Africa. Sir, your first reaction, how important and significant is this development? Is this something that you were seeking continuously? And what kind of an impact will this have for the South Africa, of course, but also for the African Union?
Well, it's a very significant development, one that we have been advocating for quite some time. As you know, we did step up that advocacy last year in Bali during the G20 Summit. We continued in various bilateral interactions with G20 members to advocate for the AU's inclusion into the G20. We are delighted that it has finally happened. We are grateful at the leadership that Prime Minister Modi and the Republic of India has demonstrated in this regard. This summit has been largely characterized by the efforts to bring into the G20 the voice of the Global South and to ensure much higher levels of inclusion than we've ever seen before. And so it's an important development that means a lot for the continent. It was never going to be sustainable to have a continent of more than 1.4 billion people excluded from this premier forum for international economic cooperation.
Well, you mentioned Global South, and this is a term that Indian Prime Minister Modi and Foreign Minister Jaishankar has been using continuously over the last 1 year. We've seen the emergence of this term many decades ago, but in the last 1 year, significantly this has been used continuously. Do you think this is a term that West tends to ignore a lot, and do you think the emergence of the Global South means something at a time when we have turbulent times and Third World was ignored completely? And now Global South is something that is emerging and cannot be ignored?
Well, over the past 20, 30 years or so, we've seen quite a strong emergence of the Chinese economy, the Indian economy, the Brazilian economy, and many others from the Global South that have emerged to be quite strong economies. Alongside that, we've seen an increase in the voices of those countries, and we've seen an increase in the voices of the Global South seeking more representativity and more inclusion in various global multilateral platforms. And so it's a very important development. There is recognition globally that you cannot chart an agenda for the world or a direction for the world that excludes large parts of the world, whether you're dealing with climate change or you're dealing with security issues. And so we're seeing the world coming together a lot more to tackle the various challenges that we are facing. Is there more work still to be done? Absolutely, there's still a lot of work, but there's finally that recognition. A couple of months ago, President Macron hosted an international conference on global financing. And again, similar sentiments were expressed about the ongoing need to include those voices that were excluded in the past, to reform global multilateral financial development institutions. And so we're going to see an enhancement of those processes, and that also includes the United Nations Security Council, which is long overdue for reform. The BRICS Summit declared that that's one of the commitments that BRICS members made, that we need to advance our advocacy for the reform of the United Nations Security Council. So this step to have the AU included in the G20 marks the beginning of a process that we would like to see, where the Global South is included, where Africa is included, where these institutions reflect the sort of broader sentiments of the world rather than being exclusive in one way or the other.
One last question. You know, there hasn't been any consensus on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and at G20, India's endeavor has been for a peaceful resolution to the conflict, for talks to actually begin between the two countries, but also in the last G20, Prime Minister Modi mentioned that this is not an era of war. Do you think there will be a consensus this time around tomorrow when the New Delhi declaration or the final communique comes out? And will the communique actually come out? What do you believe?
There were similar sentiments of concern that were expressed at the beginning of the summit in Bali last year, and ultimately we ended with a text that reflected the broader sort of sentiments of the summit. We are reasonably confident that the same will happen here. India has put in a lot of commendable effort into not only the organization of the summit, but to a successful outcome of this summit. And we don't think that just that issue alone will undermine that effort. We think there will be some consensus reached. One of the differences that we have this year, which we did not have last year, is that we have a formal peace process that's aimed at resolving that conflict peacefully. It is a very complex and intractable conflict that we are confident nonetheless that will be resolved. All wars, as President Ramaphosa always say, have to ultimately come to an end, and when they do, it involves both parties in some form of dialogue. And so this year you have a peace process which you did not have last year, and that peace process has the support of all G20 members. That peace process, particularly the African Peace Initiative, has been discussed with leaders from across the world. President Modi was well briefed about it. President of China was well briefed about it, including the sort of heads of states from G7 countries. And so that development on its own should make some kind of difference in terms of how this summit approaches its wording or declaration with respect to that conflict.
Well, let's hope there is a consensus. Thank you very much for
Thank you.
us.
Well, so that was that conversation with the representative of South Africa and the importance of African Union finally on that high table. The Biofuel Alliance, Nancy, that is again an important aspect, because we had the Solar Alliance, we had the resilient infrastructure for disaster management, but now we have the Biofuel Alliance. In terms of the Biofuel Alliance, it says here 19 countries and 12 global bodies have agreed to join under India's presidency, under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. This is now the third international institution that has been set up, after which there is room for more, because the economic corridor has come out. African Union under India's presidency is now at the high table. And more importantly, we're looking towards an international digital public infrastructure as well. A One Future Alliance. All of these things are happening under India's leadership.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that, as Rishi Sunak once said, that, this is the best time for India to host the G20 presidency, because, admitting African Union as a permanent member, which was, we were delaying it for so long. It was high time that we gave them that platform. And India is emerging as the voice of the global south that it has been, preaching for for a long time, that, we are and the way we are looking at the right issues, we are looking at, public infrastructure, we are moving towards the development of the economy, we are moving towards the, sustainable development goals, that, countries really sometimes, the West and, all the developed Russia, and they all are so much,
You talk about Russia, I think that is Sergei Lavrov.
Yes.
Who's making his way, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, so that is what I was saying. They engage in the geopolitical, they engage in the geopolitical issues like that, and they forget, the main issue, that is, the development of the developing countries, because the developed countries, they only care about, territorial integrity, how they are going to have, how they can impose their morals, their motives on the developing countries. But India, with this G20 presidency, I think India did a fantastic job at coming out and saying that, developing countries have their own issues that needs to be addressed, and developed countries, if you want to have a trade with us, if you want to have, any kind of tie with us, you have to treat us equally. And I think India put that message loud and clear in front of the developed countries, in front of all the leaders that are present there. And these alliances, that economic corridor that we're talking about, the biofuel alliance, the admission of African Union, I think these all are very important into putting India as a global leader, because that is what leaders do. They give voice to people, they give voice to the developing countries, they give voice to people who have been, as we saw in the tic-tac right now, that, the African Union, the stakeholder, he's saying that, the voice was snatched away from, there was no platform for us to go ahead and speak about the issue that affect us.
Like a lot of guests said yesterday, that now it seems like G20 is a less racist club.
Yeah, true. And it's
it
more inclusive. It's not exclusive
less
at
racist.
all.
Of course, but I beg your pardon, that actually wasn't Sergei Lavrov, that was actually Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the president of Turkey, has been so since 2014, a really, really, really long time, was elected back again after the devastating, earthquake in Turkey.
Yeah.
That was Erdogan. But the leaders are continuing to trickle in to Rajghat. There's a proper concert, ladies and gentlemen, that is slated to take place, minutes from now. And Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs and hymns, that is something that is going to be presented at the Rajghat, even as the Prime Minister, invites everybody, is welcoming everybody and telling everybody the same story, I'm sure, because it's going to be difficult for the Prime Minister to keep it snappy and snazzy and jazzy as well. How interesting can you make one story about 40 countries that have made their way, so many delegates that are coming there? Kitni baar bataya hoga?
Yeah, and he's making sure that he's, he makes sure that everybody, once you click the pictures, now let's turn around, let me show you what the history of it, what the culture is. I think it's important that he does that. I really, we should appreciate him for doing that, because it's important for everybody to know that, that is where India comes from.
And that's that Indian touch of hum batate hain aapko. Let me tell you, because you could have put a digital mosaic, you could have put up a digital screen. Ask Geeta was an AI that was already placed over there. In the Bharat Mandapam, you can ask that artificial intelligence model any kind of question, and it answers back about India's history, about India's mythology. It replies back. You could have done the same thing over here, but no, that's not the case. The Prime Minister stands there himself. He is, greeting everybody. He's wishing everybody a good morning. He's shaking hands, greeting them with this stole, and then turning around, telling them about Mahatma Gandhi, about the Sabarmati Ashram, maybe about the principles and the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi.
And I think it's important to tell them, because they're going
that it seems now is Sergei Lavrov.
Yes.
That is the Russian foreign minister who's now made his way to the Rajghat. I got confused between Lavrov and Erdogan, both tall men and certainly tall leaders at the global stage. Sorry to cut you short, Nancy. We were talking about Mahatma Gandhi's principles and teachings, and how it is now becoming an arduous task for the Prime Minister to talk about both those things. But I'm sure that he's not disappointed. Prime Minister Modi must be confident in telling the world about the teachings of India. And when I say India, of course, principles and the life of Mahatma Gandhi. He says, "My life is my teaching." It's a big board that's placed over there, right behind Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi. And very soon, a lot of delegates already there, a lot of world leaders already there. We earlier saw Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of Germany, Emmanuel Macron on his way. Rishi Sunak, haven't seen him yet, but Giorgia Meloni, we earlier saw Justin Trudeau, several other, Cyril Ramaphosa, lot of other world leaders have made their way to Rajghat. In individual motorcades, mind you, Nancy, imagine the amount of cars that are plying the national capital right now, and it's not the common people.
Yeah, and I think that was the reason why, the Delhi was shut down, so that, they don't feel any kind of a problem while, commuting, because
But do you want to take a guess? Do you want to take a guess who's coming up next?
I want it to be Rishi Sunak. I just wanted to be Rishi Sunak, because I'm waiting for him, because he's so excited. Every time he comes on screen, every time he meets Modi, the way he's just so excited.
Well, that is in fact not Rishi
Rishi
Sunak.
Sunak.
I'm sorry about that.
Disappointing.
Seems like the leader of the Republic of South Korea, but I'm not too sure. Little far away, that visual at the moment. But yes, Rajghat and the peace wall signing, all of that is going to happen today at Gandhi's Samadhi in Rajghat. What a great touch to the G20 summit. I mean, anything could have happened. You could have done anything, but you went to the Rajghat. Early in the morning, the winds are blowing, look at the weather, and there's a huge peace wall. And where else will a peace wall be than at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi?
Yes, and that is what India, that was the agenda that we presented as a country in G20, that, you know, peace, unanimity, that is, you know, equality that we are talking about, and that principle has been educated by Mahatma Gandhi, and I think it's important that we, you know, pay tribute to him, because I think it's a big achievement for India as a negotiator that, you know, they came out, they said that, you know, this is not a place to talk about geopolitical issues, this is not a place to talk about war, this is not an era of war. You know, it's high time that, you know, we sideline this issue and we focused on the correct thing, so that, you know, there is peace and harmony in the world. And, you know, signing the peace wall is another, you know, step towards it. It's another, you know, symbol of India's agenda, of India's stand in the global issues, that we are not a country that, you know, promotes war. We are not a country who believes in aggression. We are a country who believes in equality. We are a country who believes in, you know, independence and freedom and sovereignty. That, you know, it's important that we, you know, think about all the developing countries, all the developed countries, the resources. I think India is doing a fantastic job. And the touch that you were talking about, the cultural touch.
There you have it.
Oh,
And
Rishi
Nancy,
Sunak is
Rishi
here.
Sunak has made his way to the Rajghat, Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi. Earlier visited the Akshardham temple in the morning as well, Nancy. A lot of police deployment right outside Akshardham temple. The UK Prime Minister visited the Akshardham temple before coming into Rajghat. So he started his day maybe earlier than the Prime Minister himself.
Yeah. I think he went to
Greeting
Akshardham
with a
temple.
namaste. You know, usually world leaders would come and, you know, lead with a handshake. But Rishi Sunak,
at the dinner also,
Indian origin,
yeah,
leads with a namaste, folded hands.
Yes. And he's just so excited. He's, you know, he's like, he feels so, the sense of belonging while he talks, while, you know, I don't think so why Prime Minister Modi really needs to explain him, because I think he did his homework before coming to India. Because, you know, he's just happy to be here. He's just happy to, you know, reconnect with his roots. And the way he was, you know, at
Nancy,
the dinner.
what you don't understand, these are stories with a little bit of a, you know, quirky tidbit coming from the Prime Minister himself. Oh. That is something that you can't replace. That's the man himself over there. And look at that, more cordial. It seems like it's more cordial.
More cordial.
And, you know, Rishi Sunak also, you know, we used to have that Adarsh Bachcha memes back in the day. Adarshwadi Bachcha.
The Sharma ji ka beta. I think Rishi Sunak is that. Sharma ji ka beta, because he's just so well behaved all the time. And the way he just comes in and he talks about, you know, I think as a global
Joko
leader.
Widodo over there,
Yes.
leader of Indonesia. Indonesian president. Prime Minister Modi was with him just a couple of days back at the ASEAN India Summit and the East Asia Summit. Indonesia hosting the ASEAN. And again, the leaders turn around and Prime Minister has to explain or tell the leader about the importance, significance of this little picture over here, and how the message transcends boundaries, age, times, all kinds of dimensions, you name it.
And I think it's, if you saw, I don't know if I want to show the viewers as well, the way, you know, at the dinner, hosted by the president, Joko Widodo's wife wore sari. Kishida's wife also wore sari, and they were looking so beautiful.
A lot of leaders, spouses, they wore
in the Hindu attire, in the Indian attire. It was so interesting to see them wearing sari and, you know, doing the namaste, and it was so adorable to see them. You know, and those so excited, and the way Modi ji clicks selfies with every leader, it was so empowering. It was so I was so excited to see, you know, Modi clicking the, you know, the power selfies, that, you know, we have good relation with this country, with this. The Australia Prime Minister tweeted that, you know, this is what I was talking about, you know, that, you know, we have the ties, the strong ties were shown through the selfies. And I think that is so important, that, you know, these selfies are going to be historic for the time coming. I think people are going to search for it that, you know, once a Prime Minister of India clicks selfies with all the global leaders, all the top global leaders.
Those are some of the pictures from...
Yes, exactly. Look at him, look at how happy he is. And look, you know, the ties, that, you know, the handshake, the way he's so smiling with everybody standing there cordially. And we have Biden and Hasina
these
Sheikh.
are the selfies that you were talking about.
Yes.
Sheikh Hasina over there with the US President. So many of these pictures that, you know, that the Prime Minister has put across on his, you know, X profile and on his social media platforms. So many of these pictures. I mean, imagine a selfie becoming so historic that it requires a place inside a museum. That's the Australian counterpart. This with his United States counterpart. Just a grand event for India altogether. And, you know, even as one of the headlines read, and I think it was the Guardian or the CNN, I'm not too sure, but either of the two. And the headline read that, you know, the G20 summit in India comes at a time when the world is facing crisis, but for Modi, it's a time to shine.
It was the CNN that reported it, and I think it was, and I think Modi, Prime Minister Modi really, you know, used that opportunity because, you know, that is what we were talking about, you know, addressing all the important issues, coming with 100% consensus. And at the time when, you know, the war was looming over the G20, you know, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the G20 was completely divided into two sides. Russia, the West was like, no, we are not going to settle for anything less than the clear condemnation of the war in Ukraine. But India still managed, the G20 Sherpas, I have to give it to them as well, that, you know, they came up with the language for the Ukrainian conflict as well, that, you know, that was an achievement. And I think the way India handled it, the way India negotiated the terms, the way India, you know, created a bridge between the West and the developing countries and, you know, people supporting Russia and Ukraine. I think it was a commendable job that India did there.
Right. And, you know, again, for all those that are joining the stream right now, let me just take you through what is planned for today, what's the schedule for today when we're looking at, you know, the world leaders' G20 Summit. 8:15, arrival of all the heads of delegations at Rajghat. Signing of the peace wall inside the leaders' lounge at Rajghat. That's going to take place very soon. Laying of wreaths at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi and a live performance of Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs and hymns. That's going to come up next, after which all the leaders are going to start going back to the Bharat Mandapam, the venue for the G20 Summit. A small tree planting ceremony at the South Plaza, level 2 of the Bharat Mandapam, after which the third and final session of the G20 Summit, which is called One Future. The last part of the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future. The One Future Summit session going to take place today at about 10:30 a.m. And at about 12:30 in the afternoon is when you know, the leaders are going to break for some lunch, which is when I think the man on your screens that you can see, Emmanuel Macron, the French President, he's going to have a working lunch with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Sort of like ending up those round of bilaterals and press briefs. So a little bit of you know, intensified discussions that are left. An official adoption of the New Delhi Declaration. That is something that is going to happen. And after that, like Nancy put it, a chill day's work, and it is going to be a nice closing to the G20 Summit today on. Our colleague Aditya Rajkol, Executive Editor for Strategic Affairs, joins us on the broadcast. Aditya, what have you picked up? What more can you help the viewers with right now? It seems like the arrival of all the leaders is still happening. Individual motorcades means a long time. But the idea, the message, the Indianness and the ethos of something like the Sabarmati Ashram, or, you know, statues of Mahatma Gandhi and the charkha, him on the bicycle, just a little small touch of going to Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi. I think that's going to go a long way.
Absolutely, it's going to go a long way. We just saw the French President Emmanuel Macron walk inside the Rajghat premises. In fact, he's being welcomed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and being shown the Sabarmati Ashram of Mahatma Gandhi, a big photograph poster of which has been put on display at the Rajghat Fort photo ops. The Rajghat ceremony is still underway. It will continue for the next 45 minutes or so, and thereafter the leaders will exit the Rajghat and come to the nearby Bharat Mandapam, which is just a few kilometers away from that particular location. Rajghat ceremonially and symbolically is very essential and important and has almost become a ritual over the years and decades for any global leader coming to New Delhi for any bilateral or a multilateral visit. So clearly it's a very significant development, coming in immediately after New Delhi was able to achieve a consensus on the platform of G20 and a New Delhi declaration was declared, and consensus not just on Ukraine and Russia but also on several significant issues including global economy and geo-economic situation all across. So it was a 37-page document which included about 85 paragraphs that was released, and there was a 100% consensus among the G20 countries on it. So the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial visit is even more significant because Prime Minister Narendra Modi had reflected at the Bali summit that this is not an era of war, and the same statement which he famously said in Bali has been quoted in the 37-page New Delhi declaration as well. So clearly now is the final day of the G20 summit, but as we say, the meat of it is almost over, because yesterday was the big breaking news moment, not just for India but for the global media, when the consensus was really achieved, and not just a consensus but India emerging as a leader of the global south with the inclusion of the African Union as a permanent member of the G20. So a win-win situation for India, even though the global media had speculated that the consensus would not be achieved at a time when both Putin and Xi Jinping had decided not to visit New Delhi for this G20 summit. They had perhaps planned this strategically, thinking that they would be able to scuttle the New Delhi summit, or perhaps there was some understanding. But as of now, it is very much clear that the New Delhi G20 summit has been a massive success, which will be remembered for years now.
In terms of geopolitical diplomacy, what next, Aditya? You're right in pointing out that the meat is essentially over. But what next? What's the word in the International Media Center in terms of the Quad Summit? We know that the leaders were essentially being proposed to be invited for the next Republic Day in 2024. But any kind of development on that front?
Well, there are several aspects of this. Many of the Western countries, including the US, have been trying to corner the Chinese BRI, and that's why the big talking point yesterday, apart from G20 declaration and also the African Union's permanent adoption inside the G20, was also the multilateral that took place on connectivity and economic ties being made stronger between US, Europe, Middle East and India. And that was a big talking point yesterday, because that comes as a challenge, as a counter to the Chinese BRI. For example, Italy, that I was mentioning earlier as well, was part of the BRI but has had problems with China and has decided to exit the BRI and instead join a much bigger and much transparent body and multilateral, which is something that believes in the international law and the international order. So clearly, as of now, it does seem that it's a win-win situation here. And geopolitically speaking, there are several other summits that are planned in future. We'll have, of course, the Quad summit next year in 2024, where President Biden has already accepted the invitation of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. There's also talk of the Republic Day guests next year, which will probably be the Quad leaders from US, Japan and Australia. So clearly a big significant moment in the run-up to the 2024 elections, clearly.
And lastly, Aditya, it seems like you can't ignore the presence of India in any kind of international decision making. India has certainly made it. Throw some light for the viewers on how important this is for the 140 crore people and their aspirations behind this G20 summit.
Well, one has to understand, and when I say one has to understand, it is the global community which has to understand that New Delhi in 2023 is not the New Delhi of 1947 or 1975. We have learnt our lessons, we have been through trials and tribulations, and this is a new diplomacy of a new India, which is emerging as a leader or not only of the global south, but a voice of the global voiceless community all across. And that's why India pressed for the African Union to be included in the G20 and met success in that. It was a long desire of the African Union to be an equal partner, an equal shareholder in the interests of the G20 nations, and that's what has been made possible in India's presidency. So clearly India cannot be ignored, and of course the connectivity projects that we are talking about, global cooperation on climate change as well, and several other aspects clearly indicates that New Delhi is making its presence felt, and New Delhi's wishes or New Delhi's viewpoints or independent concerns cannot really be ignored anymore by the global community. And that's why there are several countries all across the globe who want even better bilateral cooperation and strategic partnership with India. US and France already have a very robust mechanism of a strategic partnership with India. There are several other countries that are now inking many more agreements and deals with India, be it from defense to climate change to space, that we'll see even more in the coming weeks and months. So clearly, New Delhi has, traditionally had a non-aligned policy, but now in the last few months and years has even more significantly and in a very resounding manner being very clear that it will have an independent position. It will not join one bloc against the other. Its independent relation with Russia does not mean that it will not have an independent relation with Ukraine or US. This is something that the Europe and the US perhaps took time to understand, but perhaps there's a growing realization in most of the European countries that India is not the India of the past. This is a new India that they're dealing with, which will have independent aspirations and concerns, and you certainly cannot ignore those concerns.
All right then, Aditya, many thanks for joining with us and helping us out with the latest inputs right from the International Media Center. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got our man stationed where one needs to. We're going to continue to go across to Aditya even as all the leaders begin to leave Rajghat for that final session. But as of now, that Wreath laying ceremony is going to take place at Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi. Most of the leaders have already made their way over there. And Nancy, I think Aditya put it in the best way possible. It's New Delhi and it's a new diplomacy of New Delhi.
Yeah, and as Jaishankar said, that Bali is Bali, New Delhi is New Delhi. And the way we proposed the declaration, the way the language that was used, and as Aditi was clearly pointing it out, that it is high time that the West and the Europe realized that India is not the India that India was in the past. This is new India, which believes in independent coalition, which believes in independent stand, which is not going to get involved and suffer in geopolitical issues, and it's going to keep its focus on issues that are going to matter India in the future, that are going to matter developing countries in the future. And that is what I have been saying for again and again, that India is no more the country that everybody thought it was, that they are going to outsource the jobs, they are still not developed, they are ruler a country. But now we have come out as a country that with the successful launch of Chandrayaan 3, with Aditya L1, and the leaps that we are taking in each and every sector is commendable. And we are emerging as a global leader, we are emerging as a global power, and we are not going to take any kind of imposition, or your problem is your issue. We have independent relations with every country, we have independent relations with Russia, and that is not going to affect our stand, our independence, our sovereignty. I think that is something important that India has put forth.
I was just going through X on my phone, and I chanced upon President Biden's tweet. It says, "One Earth, one family, one future." That's the focus of this G20 summit: building resilient infrastructure, making quality infrastructural investments, and creating a better future that represents greater opportunity, dignity, and prosperity for everyone. With a picture of him looking at Prime Minister Modi. Photo ops between these two people. I'm telling you, both these leaders know when the camera is around them, when to stop, what is the right depth of field.
Yes,
I think you don't have to tell these people anymore.
They are so apt with the pictures, because every historic pic that you will see of Modi and Biden, you know, whether they're laughing, whether they're toasting at the US state dinner party, whether they're meeting, whether the handshake and the pat that we were talking about yesterday, the signature handshake and the pat. I think they're so, you know, apt with it. They're like, you know, we know that the camera is capturing us. Let's give them one candid historical pic that they're going to be talking about for years to come. And I think it's so important to see. And if you see the images,
like for example, this picture. There's so much that's going on in this one picture. There's so much that's going on in this picture as well.
You know,
I mean, this is a historical moment.
A picture speaks 1,000 words, and that is the 1,000 word. I think the picture speaks one word, that, you know, as you were reading the headline, that, you know, the Bharat agenda is loud and clear. Everybody knows that, you know,
Brand Bharat. Again,
Bharat.
this image again over here. You know, one can just talk about these images for days on end, because you know, the factors at play in all of these pictures, if one tries and decode and, you know, break them apart, try to read between the lines, you'll understand. I mean, this picture right here with the Italian you know, leader, this right here with the Japanese leader, and so on and so forth, you know, with all the leaders of all you know, the countries that have come in. And yesterday's dinner itself was such a huge success.
Yes,
all
absolutely.
the leaders, you know, you rightly pointed it out that you know, most of the leaders and their significant halves and their partners were dressed up in Indian attires, most of them in saris. And you know,
so
Indian saris.
Yeah, they were looking so beautiful together. And I think, and I have to say this, you know, all the pictures that we were talking about, they're all trending on social media, and I think the youth is so excited to see these pictures, to see these selfies, because, you know, these concepts were not available to, I never thought that, you know, after we'll be getting selfies from a global summit, that, you know, a historical summit, that all the global leaders in one frame clicking selfies in a candid way. I think that is so important, because it ignites interest among people to, you know, to actually thought about that, what happened, what were they talking about, you know, how did they, you know, approach other global leaders, let's take a selfie.
I'm sure not all of them are, you know, real hard conversations. I'm sure they do share some lighter notes as well.
They must talk about something, yeah, they must joke about something, I would say.
I mean, you never know, maybe there's gossip doing the rounds behind the doors as well.
Do you know, did you see what she was wearing? Did you see what he was wearing? I think that type of talks must have happened, because I think last night, when, you know, they were welcoming all the global leaders, when Modi was welcoming global leaders, the way you know, they were all, you know, the handshake, and then there was some joke that he was cracking, and everybody laughing and, you know, gossiping in each other's ears. That was such a, you know, it's interesting to see, because, you know, these visuals represent.
This is from last night, when the Prime Minister welcomed the United States President and introduced the President of India, or Bharat, if I may, to the President of the United States. And this picture again is going to be very, very, very iconic.
The shoulder pat is there.
The President again made sure that, you know, he accords the right kind of honor and respect towards Draupadi Murmu, the President of our country, you know, the head and leader of the supreme leader of the three, you know, forces. But what a successful dinner yesterday as well.
What a successful dinner, and I think it's so important to see that, you know, India is emerging as some, you know, there was a lot of controversy over, you know, when Draupadi Murmu, the President, Honorable President, was not present at the inauguration, and I think this time Modi made sure that, you know, he first invited and introduced the guest to the President, you know, meet the President of our country, which is already, you know, she's already representing the women, the tribes of our country, which is already, you know, a great way for India to, you know, to represent themselves on the global map. And the dinner was successful. Everybody dressed up pretty nicely, you know, and there is a list of menu as well, that, you know, from Mumbai Pav and what Indian dishes were served.
What were some of those dishes? What were some of the highlights of the dishes that were served?
I think for me it was the Mumbai Pav, the Misal Pav, and, you know, there was Pav Bhaji as well, which was interesting to see that. And I just want to know that I just want to hear the feedback of the delegates, that did they enjoy our Mumbai Pav, did they enjoy the Pav Bhaji that we were serving them. So
well, let me tell you, they're not going to say anything bad against, you know, India once
anymore.
they're here. And I'm sure because of, you know, the arrangements that we've made and the heart that, you know, the administration has put in into this summit, that will certainly go a long, long way. More than that, ladies and gentlemen, what you're looking at right now on your screens on the stream, live visuals of the President of the United States, Joe Biden, making his way to Rajghat, the Samadhi of Mahatma Gandhi, where a proper concert has been planned after the signing of the peace wall by all the global leaders. It is raining. It has been raining in the national capital. Mother Nature has been wreaking a little bit of a havoc, but that is not stopping or dampening the spirit and excitement of the world leaders right at the G20 Summit. President Biden, understanding what Rajghat essentially is, must be asking a lot of questions. And the people that have been placed and programmed to escort the US President from place A to point B, they're well versed with the knowledge. I mean, everybody's on their A game essentially.
Yes.
And I'm so happy to see that the US President as well is very inquisitive. He's been asking the right kind of questions. He's been asking questions all across to Draupadi Murmu, to that little girl who was standing there right next to Jake Sullivan when he landed in India. And now he's again going to meet Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi again.
There we have it.
Another, a different type of a bonhomie is something that is at display when these two meet.
Yes.
I mean, they actually look like they're friends now.
They're friends now, yeah.
It's not just global leaders, they actually look like they're all friends.
When you wait for that one person at an event, that's my friend, I'm going to meet him or her here.
All of this was being done for Joe Biden, is it, huh?
Yeah. I mean, the way he approaches him, the way he's like, thank God you're here, I was waiting for you, I was going to get bored, thank you so much for coming. And again, Modi is explaining him what the history is behind Rajghat, what the culture, what the
and he's had quite a fair bit of practice also.
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi has got, because he's already explained the same some 10,000 times before this one. But this is what it was meant for.
I think he's going to add some special information for Biden, just for Joe Biden, that see, the talk is been going on. It extended.
Yeah.
He didn't spend this much time with anybody.
This is what I meant when both the leaders know when the cameras are doing the rounds, when they're right, nearby them in their vicinity.
Let's give them what they want.
Exactly what they want, and you're exactly right over there. See how it gets funny also. They'll start laughing also. Then it gets serious also.
I just really want to hear what they're talking about. The curiosity that they're
igniting
Nancy,
right
now.
For that you'll have to pay $1 million.
Yeah,
for that you'll have to pay $1 million. That kind of espionage not available in today's times. And the security that has been provided to all the global leaders, even as I joke about that espionage, lighter vein, I don't think that's possible. It's impossible to breach the security of all these global leaders in the national capital. That's the kind of, rigor and vigor with which the security agencies and the forces and the National Security Advisor and the G20 Sherpa, they've prepared and planned out the G20 Summit. The preparations have been spot on.
Spot on. I think we have to give it to the organizers.
To the extent that you've had to deploy policemen to secure, normal flower pots as well in the national capital, because people just come and flick them up. We all know what happened at the Commonwealth Games.
India made sure that there is no room for any kind of mistakes, not any kind of mishaps. And there should be no problem that the G20 delegates should be facing while commuting, while coming to the event, while going, escorting them out, escorting them in, while they're eating. Everything was so pre-planned and so organized, and I think the preparations were. India was so prepared that these are the issues that we are going to talk about, these are the arrangements that we are going to make, and everything was just so spot on that everybody. I think it was a great achievement for our country to to represent ourselves on a global map in front of global leaders, top leaders, and I think everybody is appreciating India right now for its historic G20 summit, the way they came up with the declaration, the way they they are strengthening their ties, their economical ties, their defense ties with each and every developed country, and I think it's very important for us to highlight that again and again, that India is not the India that people used to talk about in the past. This is New Delhi, New India with new agenda.
Leader of Brazil on your screens, ladies and gentlemen, making his way now to meet the Prime Minister early in the morning, greet their good mornings to each other, and well, after that particular exchange, move on to the signing of the peace wall. Again, Brazil as well, you know, in the expansion of BRICS, when we're looking at all these global summits. Lula Silva's role and Brazil's role has also been, you know, quite important. Lula Silva has been a prominent voice in the BRICS 100%, and this time around, you know, accepting the admission of Argentina into the BRICS is something. I mean, that Brazil versus Argentina rivalry looks good on a football pitch, but being South Americans, they really are helping out each other. And Lula Silva, who's again recently, you know, last year, no, this year, right in the beginning, is when he got elected.
Yes, and I think the way, you know, it's great that you mentioned BRIC, because, you know, China attended the BRIC summit, and it's important to note that, you know, these two summits are completely different. But, you know, when China or, you know, when, you know, these countries, because when you are a close knitted group, when, you know, there are specific countries, G20 is a big summit, you know, we have a lot of global leaders coming in. So, you know, here the issues that we cover are, you know, vague issues, because it is going to affect the world. Because, you know, 80%,
they're not focused in general.
They're not focused in general. So, you know, China attend BRICS meeting, you know, because he knows that, you know, there's something that our impact is going to be very powerful. We are going to impose. It's easy for us to impose. It's easy for us to influence, you know, in the BRICS meeting. But when it comes to G20, when, you know, there are a lot of leaders already there, and, you know, Xi's absence and Puti's absence, it was going to be a very difficult task for India to come up, you know, to resolve the issues. But, you know, India was like, you know, it doesn't matter anymore whether you attend the meet or whether you don't, because I think Jaishankar, in an interview with the ANI, said it, that, you know, their absence has nothing to do with India. You know, it's their issue. Again, the agenda of, you know, independence, the agenda of individualism as a country, but yet moving towards development as a one nation and one family.
Well, we put our heart and soul into this G20 summit, and China and its president, you know, Xi Jinping, has certainly missed out on what India had actually, you know, set out to offer.
Yes.
And, you know, geopolitics comes after India's love for greeting its, you know, guests.
The hospitality.
Absolutely. And Xi Jinping made his way to BRICS. Of course, he did have a, you know, pull aside with the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister did meet Xi Jinping, but Xi Jinping did not make his way to the national capital for the G20 summit, which again, for a lot of people are saying that, you know, it is the right kind of messaging from China, and India has given a response in the right vein. But more importantly, the fact of the matter is that it did not affect anything.
Yeah.
The G20 summit was a great success. It still is. It's still going on. Just the first day of the G20 summit was a great success. Even as I speak, you know, Friday evening was a great success, because Friday evening, which wasn't even the day of the summit, the bilateral took place between Mauritius, India and Bangladesh, and of course India and Joe Biden, India and the United States later on in the evening. I mean, these are some crucial bilaterals that took place on Friday. So Friday in itself, standalone day, was so successful. Saturday was, you know, the trophy day. And what's going to happen today? Well, already it seems like, you know, the idea is right. It has been set forth. Take a look at some of these visuals. Now, Nancy, this is what was, you know, on display for everybody. And Xi Jinping, well, sir, you've missed it.
Yes, exactly. You know, because the way we decorated Delhi, we completely changed the look of Delhi. You know, you can say it was shocking for me, because a day before there was nothing on the walls, and next day when I woke up, when I was coming to the office, I saw that, you know, there were paintings, murals of Chandrayaan 3.
All right,
and
then it seems like the program is about to begin at Rajghat. At the Rajghat, it seems like all the leaders have made their way. The Prime Minister is done greeting and welcoming all the leaders. Bare feet over there, it seems like. In Rajghat, of course, it has rained early in the morning. Still drizzling in several places in the national capital. But all the world leaders that you can see on your screens, ladies and gentlemen. Olaf Scholz somewhere there in the back, Anthony Albanese over there as well, Joko Widodo is somebody you can see, of course Erdogan also over there, Joe Biden with Prime Minister Modi leading the way, and the leaders are following one by one. They're all trickling down. What a great visual, Nancy. Again, I mean the photo ops of this ceremony at Rajghat, the program. Prime Minister Modi leading the way of
all the global leaders.
Non-violence, peace, harmony, simple living, high thinking.
You can see all the global top leaders following Mr. Modi.
मन अभिमान आनर वैष्णव जन तो तेरे कहिए पीड़ पराये जानर वैष्णव जन तो.
But I've made some observations. Seems like Rishi Sunak also going without his shoes and socks, following in the right footsteps of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And that's not all. I also thought Justin Trudeau not using those slippers as well. I mean, I'm sure being the leader of Canada must be visiting a lot of places of worship, different places of worship. It's a secular place, and removing shoes and your socks, going completely bare feet is something that he might not be completely oblivious to. So there you have it, all the world leaders following the Prime Minister of India, followed by the United States' President Joe Biden, and then so on and so forth, paying obeisance, paying tribute to Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi. The wreath laying ceremony is now going to take place. All the wreaths that have been placed in the right order, because it is the entire G20, again I'm going to say it, it's been managed to the T. This is a logistical and managerial person's dream to conduct something like this, and with top-notch efficiency with which that it's being carried out. Imagine all the leaders standing in that square right across Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi Square. What a beautiful photograph that's going to be.
That's the influence, that's the emerging power of India that we were talking about. People coming in barefoot, following the culture. I think that is what India is about.
Your Highnesses and Excellencies, thank you for joining us for this special occasion at Rajghat. I will now request the leaders to kindly step forward and adjust the country ribbons on the wreaths, please. We shall now have a moment's silence, please. Thank you, Excellencies.
So the wreath-laying ceremony has been completed. All the leaders now heading towards that concert, it seems, according to the planned program. There's going to be a 15-20 minute concert on Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs and hymns. The Prime Minister with the United States President and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Rishi Sunak, in a conversation on this peaceful morning. Light drizzle, hymns loved by Mahatma Gandhi, and wreath-laying ceremony by all the global leaders at Rajghat on the Samadhi of Mahatma Gandhi.
रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम 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 ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम 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 ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान ईश्वर अल्लाह तेरे नाम सबको सन्मति दे भगवान रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम
Also, all the world leaders now getting together for that photo operation that is going to be taken right in front of a big picture of the Sabarmati Ashram, really serenading all the world leaders in the ideas and the life principles of Mahatma Gandhi, of high thinking, simple living, the truth and non-violence. There is going to be a signing of the peace wall that is going to be done by all the world leaders. This visual of all the wreaths that have been laid by the top global leaders on the Samadhi of Mahatma Gandhi. Right here in the heart of the national capital at Rajghat, the global leaders have begun the second day of the G20 Summit by paying their tributes to Mahatma Gandhi. A signing of the peace wall by the G20 leaders is going to take next. after which all the leaders are going to start moving towards the Bharat Mandapam, meters away from the Rajghat, where the third and final session, One Future, is going to take place. A slew of bilaterals that are slated to take place, and of course the President of the United States, Joe Biden, departs for Hanoi, Vietnam, right after the ceremony in Rajghat. There you have it. In homage, all the wreaths that have been laid there. There was a minute of silence that was observed by all the global leaders. A concert and a performance of Mahatma Gandhi's favorite devotional songs and hymns. That is certainly going to be on display. His Excellency Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, that wreath representing Brazil's involvement in the wreath laying ceremony, and just like that, all the other countries as well. Nancy, again, you know, a very somber tone that the G20 Summit has taken. It has gotten serious, it has gotten, you know, real, emotional, and there's a connect over there as well. We were just getting the entire, you know, visual feed from Rajghat, where all the leaders were first welcomed by the Prime Minister. And then, you know, the larger message that is being sent across the world, that the Prime Minister is leading the way. And we've already seen those reels and memes doing the round, where, you know, there's you know, a real pumpy, jumpy pop song where Prime Minister is leading the way on various, you know, occasions, and people have cut out those portions of the Prime Minister leading the way. Well, you can add this visual in that reel as well, because the Prime Minister, again, barefoot at the Rajghat, that somber music of Raghupati Raghava Rajaram playing at the back. And what better place than Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi itself?
I think it was such a beautiful day to start the second day of the G20 Summit. And as he was walking towards the Rajghat, it was like, you know, India moving towards India, leading the way towards peace, towards, you know, unanimity, towards equality. And it was such an emotional moment, you know, when all the leaders were, you know, surrounded by the Mahatma Gandhi Samadhi, and, you know, they were paying, you know, there was 2-minute silence. You know, they paid their tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, and it showed that, you know, India represented that this is what our principles, this is the man who set that principle, who set the tone for India. It was such a proud moment to see, you know, the Prime Minister of our country leading all the leaders, top leaders of our country towards the Rajghat, you know, paying tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, paying tribute to the principle that India stands for. So it was completely, you know, a proud moment for the country.
No, you're absolutely right, and not just that, because you know, the cultural habits that we follow here back at home. You know, you're going to a mosque, a temple, a Gurudwara, you tend to, take your shoes off. You tend to clean yourself up a little bit.
True.
And those protocols were again followed, right over here. The leaders were asked to, take their shoes off, take their footwear off, and then enter Rajghat. That must have been something a little different. Most of these, foreign leaders and global world leaders came out and, they folded their hands and did a namaste right in the beginning, right early in the morning. I'm sure they're greeted by their hotel staff the same way. But that is something that they've picked up. And this is how we greet each other in India, in Bharat. Why don't you do the same? And so many people must have organically picked that up. Even as we're getting these visuals, take a look at that again for all the viewers, for all of them to see how the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, he led the way with the US President, talking him through, the Rajghat premises, what Mahatma Gandhi's Samadhi essentially means, summing all of that up. But this is what I'm talking about. The Prime Minister again leading the way.
And followed by all the top leaders.
With all humility.
Yes.
He doesn't have a proud chest when he's doing so.
True.
He's just leading the way.
The humbleness in the way he's walking towards the Rajghat. And it's such a powerful visual that, he's leading the way. And all the top leaders in suits and, barefoot are following the Prime Minister of India.
Yeah, seems like I mean, of course, I wanted to crack an SPG joke over here. They look like a Prime Minister's security detail itself.
True.
But no, that's the global leaders and the Prime Minister with all the humility and, somber steps. It seems like there's thought behind every step that the Prime Minister is taking. That's the kind of essence that comes across. And that is the Bharat brand that is today loud and clear for the entire world to see. It's like a stamp on the global map that, India has certainly made it. What are you talking about? G20? We made it G21.
Yeah.
And very soon it might just be G8 from G7 as well, with India finally booking its permanent seat on the table. And why just that? Why not make a separate grouping? I mean, if in today's times, you need the global South's voice to come out, the Africa, the largest and the fastest growing continent, its voice to come out, its visibility to be credibly put forth in front of the world to see. Why not create more alliances, more coalitions, more groupings of these leaders? Because like various top diplomats have come and put it, the G7 is a Brahmins club, the G20 is a Kshatriyas club. Well, not so, not anymore. They said G20 had, traces of racism. Well, no, not anymore. Under India's presidency, we've made sure that third worldism is out of the window and responsible, viewpoints on crisis and issues that are troubling and crippling the entire world, not just an Indo-Pacific, not just a global South, not just a proper developed West, but the entire world, because the entire world has to come together. And what better theme to work under than of one earth, one family and one future.
And I think the way India projected the agenda, the way India, projected, that this is what we were talking about, the equality that we were talking about, there are differences, it's not our fault that we are developing countries, it's not our fault that we belong to the third world. So, the developed country, they have this, responsibility. It's not a competition between the developed countries and the developing countries, but it's the other way around, that it's the responsibility of the countries, of the developed countries, to provide resources, to provide equal platform to these countries, to hear their issues, to talk about what they are going through. Suddenly we are talking about Myanmar, the political turmoil that has been going on in Myanmar for so long, and that issues being talked about at summits, at global summit. And I think India is the one who is pitching for it. So I think if that, as you were saying, that if there are going to be any summit, any international bodies, I think India is going to lead the way for it. India is going to be the representative of the global South, of the Southeast Asia, of the South Asia, and the way, because India has this quality of being the Vasudev Kutumbakam that we talk about, that we teach, we preach that as well, that everybody is equal, everybody, you know, we are one nation, we are one family, and we have to work together for it, because that is the principle that India as a country stands. So
You're
it's
absolutely
important.
right. You know, it's a big day. India is also going to take on Pakistan today for the second time in recent past in terms of cricket. Lots of pujas and havans being done for that on that end as well. But a lot of worshipping and pujas and havans that have been conducted for the success of the G20 Summit across the length and breadth of the country. And it's important to note that, you know, the countrymen are behind the G20 Summit. It's not like it's happening in the national capital and people aren't talking about it.
Exactly.
People want to know what is being said. People want to know what is the New Delhi Declaration. People want to understand how India is going to play a pivotal role in other people's projects, in other people's lives, how India is going to bridge the gap in the digital gender parity, how India is going to bridge the gap in various biofuel and solar alliances, how India is going to bridge the gap in providing a platform for proposing a possible and a successful One Future alliance.
I think the inclusivity that this G20 summit had, I don't think so I've seen it anywhere or in any international summit, the way India made, made sure that every country, developing, developed, any country feel welcomed in our country, whether it was from, decorating the country, decorating Delhi as a bride, or, giving, the hospitality that we gave. I think just not that, but the way we talked about issues, the way we put our stand, the Delhi Declaration, if you read it, it's so inclusive that it's talking about all the issues that are important. As Jaishankar said, that there are 8 paragraphs talking about the Ukraine conflict, that all the issues were covered. He talked about it so briefly that we tried to take into account, even though India said that this is not a platform for to discuss geopolitical issues, but if we have to address it, we are going to address it properly.
It says here that there are 200 hours, and this is coming from India's G20 Sherpa, which is Amitabh Kant, saying that there are 200 hours of non-stop negotiations and 15 drafts finally led to consensus on Ukraine.
That is what
That
I was
is the
talking
amount
about.
of arduous struggle the G20 Sherpas had to go through, because so much of deliberations must have happened. China, it seems, yes, till finally people started breaking the news that a breakthrough has been arrived at, has been reached at. And the Prime Minister, right before the second session of the summit, he said that we have consensus. We finally have consensus, and people started clapping. And then the New Delhi Declaration, and finally the Finance Minister with the External Affairs Minister, attended that press briefing, told the entire world about how India has been successful in arriving at 100% consensus. Those 100 ghante, 200 hours
200
and 15
hours.
drafts, back to back, continuous 200 hours.
Yeah, and I think because everybody was eyeing that, everybody knew that all the issues that were presented at the G20 summit, they were all resolved, but everybody was very curious about, everybody was interested that how India is going to reach a consensus and how India is going to convince the West and China and Russia to come on a consensus on the issue that has divided the country, the world into 2 parts. And I think the way when the declaration was announced, and the way Jaishankar came out and he said that we as a country, we stand for equality, we stand for inclusivity, and we try to cover each and every issue that was related to this Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we made sure that we kept that neutral stand that we have kept since the beginning of the war. They continued the stand, they stood by it, and the declaration is the clear representation of the India's agenda.
Well, all right then, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like we've come to the end of this particular segment, even as the peace wall is now going to be signed by all the leaders, and all the leaders are going to make their way back towards Bharat Mandapam for the final session of the G20 Summit, the One Future session, beg your pardon, of the G20 Summit, which is going to take place after a small tree planting session on the second level of the South Plaza of the Bharat Mandapam. It's a big premise. Let's not fool ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. And then after that, a slew of bilaterals, press briefs at the International Media Center, and let's not forget that very important working lunch that's going to take place between the Honorable Prime Minister of India and the French President Emmanuel Macron. A lot of it still left on the cards, a lot of it that is still going to happen. News 9 is going to bring you by the minute update on all of this. That's all the time Nancy and I have for you. This is us signing off. On the other side, our colleague Varghese P. Abraham brings you all the latest details from Bharat Mandapam. It is the one future session of the G20 Summit. Stay tuned.
Gautam Adani, one of the richest men in the world, or a business honcho, accused of manipulating the market.
अदानी जी 609 नंबर से दूसरे नंबर तक कैसे पहुंचे? सिर्फ एक सवाल पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका अदानी जी से रिश्ता क्या है?
He has given the space, the railways, the airport.